Hi, I'm Ricky. Welcome to Secular Scriptures, where we're going to explore the Bible and Christianity, but through an agnostic lens. My first video, I want to look at one of the most fascinating yet misunderstood figures of the New Testament, Mary Magdalene. She's mysterious, loyal, important, and seriously misrepresented. So first, let's look at her name, Mary Magdalene. In this time of antiquity, people did not have last names. So we often hear titles such as Jesus of Nazareth, John, the son of Zebedee, Jude, the brother of James, etc., etc. So two names sort of seem to jump out from that: Judas Iscariot and Mary Magdalene. What do their last names mean? Now, they both have their different theories. In Mary's case, people often think there's a nearby town in this geography called Magdala, which maybe she's from, which seems to be what most people believe. I do want to point to Luke 8, verse 2 though. It says, Mary called Magdalene, not Mary from Magdala, or Mary a Magdalene. It's quite an interesting way of saying it, Mary called Magdalene. Kind of implies maybe there was more of like a symbolic nickname or meaning that's been lost to that. We don't know. Big myth busting time. Mary Magdalene was not a prostitute. I know, many people think this is common knowledge. It was actually a mix-up by Pope Gregory I in the 6th century CE. He mixed up Mary Magdalene with Mary of Bethany, found in John 12, and the anonymous sinful woman in Luke 7. The official Catholic Church corrected this mistake in 1969, and today she is recognised as a saint and an important figure in early Christianity. Her feast day is celebrated on July 22nd. So, who was she then? Well, let's go back to Luke 8. It says here, and some women who had been healed of evil spirits and disabilities, Mary, called Magdalene, from whom 7 demons had gone out, and Joanna, the wife of Chuza, Herod's household manager, Susanna, and many others who provided for them out of their own resources. The them in this is the Jesus and the 12, which is represented in the previous verses. So very interesting information here. Mary and these women seem to have been cured from demon possessions and disabilities. We're not exactly sure what that would have looked like, but they were cured by Jesus' miracles, we can understand from that. More importantly though, these group of women provided for them out of their own resources. This means they financially, emotionally and physically supported Jesus and the 12. That's huge. That means at the core of these men, you know, they say behind every great man is a greater woman. It turns out these women were the core support system of the 12 and the early Jesus movement. In fact, in all 4 Gospels, this group of supportive women, sometimes with different women involved, were there at the crucifixion. And in 3 of those, Mary Magdalene is specifically named at being at this crucifixion. That's even in Mark and Matthew when all the men had fled. So when all the disciples had left, Mary Magdalene was there till the end. Very loyal, very important. In all 4 Gospels, Mary is actually one of the first women at the tomb to see that Jesus has risen. And she meets a figure there who tells her to go and tell the others. In fact, in John 20, this figure is actually Jesus himself telling her to go and tell the others. That makes her, in this account, the first apostle, or often titled the apostle to the apostles. Now this is a massive heightened of most people's understanding of her role within the early Christianity and her importance as a person. Actually, about this tomb visit, in Mark is considered our earliest gospel written. And in the earliest version of this earliest account, it ends with, then they, Mary and the other women, went out and ran from the tomb, for terror and bewilderment had seized them, and they said nothing to no one because they were afraid. Imagine if that's just how it ended. They either saw the resurrected Jesus or they heard of the resurrected Jesus, but then they didn't tell anybody. The Christianity just never grew. That's a really interesting thought and concept, that the original just ended there. But anyway, later we see this longer version of Mark start to take, and the first lines, early on the first day of the week after he arose, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene, from whom he had driven out 7 demons. She went out and told those who were with him. So yeah, it carries on the tradition there that she is in fact the first apostle, the apostle to the apostles. The traditions of Mary doesn't just end with the Bible. They carry on with other gospels that are non-canonical, that did not make it into the Bible. Now these came sometimes centuries later, so they're not historically accurate, but they definitely display how the ideas and traditions of Mary's importance was shared throughout early Christianity. One of these is the Gospel of Mary. She has her own gospel, in which Peter says, "Sister, we know that the Saviour loved you more than the rest of women," showing her importance. And in this gospel, she goes on to share some inner teachings that only she learned, that she was picked specially to learn. I'm probably going to look at this gospel and others more closely in other videos, and the idea of Gnosticism and other branches of early Christianity. On that note of Gnosticism, there's also the Gospel of Philip. Now this one is really fascinating and where a lot of our conspiracy theories come from. Look at this part here. The consort of Christ is Mary Magdalene. The Lord loved Mary more than all the disciples, and he kissed her on the mouth many times. The other disciples saw him. They said, "Why do you love her more than all of us?" That is fascinating. And that's where we get a lot of this Dan Brown, Da Vinci Code type conspiracy theories of Mary having a child of Jesus and the bloodline of Jesus and the rest of it. As I said, not historically accurate of what the historic Mary probably did, but definitely a really good example of her importance and just how layered and different Christianity is. One of the big things I'm showing through these videos is that Christianity is an umbrella of religions, of belief, rather than a unified structure. Whatever the actual truth of the matter, Mary Magdalene was definitely significant in the early growth of Christianity. Thank you for watching. If you want to watch more videos of mine, please support a little subscription, a little like.